man. So that was strange. But so I ended up getting a job that was not on that list. I got a command that was not available to everybody. And my male counterparts questioned, well, there must be a reason why they gave that command to a woman. It must be a woman unit. And that's absolutely not the case. But people couldn't just accept that maybe it was because of my skills and my hard work and my dedication, and not because I was a woman.
And I want to, and first of all, like this is, I've never heard of that, right? And I want to highlight, what year was this?
This
Because
was in 2008.
this was not World War II or Vietnam veteran, Vietnam
Mhm.
era. This is, you said 2008.
2008.
Like that is crazy to see, right? That it was this close of time, and our military was still doing the segregation between genders. And now we are in a position where we are becoming more open, and now there's really no gender specific things, right? And I want to say in 2003 and 2005, as women in combat and in combat roles, we were often not um, recognized and commended for the role we had in the field and in deployments, right? So combat action badges. I've been in convoys where every male got a combat action badge, and I didn't, right? Because at that time there was still that belief of like women really shouldn't be in those positions, so we're not going to highlight and reward that because we're not there yet. So yeah, was just in 2008, and we were still that backdated.
Yeah, I will say that I think there has been progress from what I observed, and I think that's really important. What you highlighted, D, that certain awards or accomplishments that weren't highlighted, especially it sounds like this was merit based, and you've done well, and it just sounds like it's going to be hard to change a very institutional organization that takes a while. It's very bureaucratic. There's a lot that goes on, but again, I want to commend you both for doing that. So let's real quick dive into this next segment, and let's talk about your transition here. So a lot of veterans here on the Veterans Club, one of the things which I think it has gotten better is transition, right? But then there are still some veterans who have not, who are still transitioning. Like I myself, 10 years, and I feel like I'm still transitioning, right? Like finding your identity. Like we have Lakeisha here who talks a lot about that. Like who am I as someone that has transitioned now, because you have to take off the uniform and you were given a mission and purpose, and now you got to try to navigate this thing they call the civilian world, which is a whole different ball game, right? So I'd love for you to talk about your transition story a little bit.
So what I want to say about this, because I hear the stories of many veterans, and I can relate to a lot of them a great deal. I think the piece that we don't talk about enough is how emotionally challenging it is. And with the emotions brings self-doubt, things I've struggled with myself and that many veterans struggle with. Someone is always going to say something or do something that sends the message that we don't belong, especially if we're retiring in an area that we're not from, or we're starting in a new career field, or we're going back to school. So we need to be able to hear these messages that we're going to receive on a constant basis, and also reminding ourselves, and while hearing it and experiencing the emotions, that we belong just as much as anyone else does. Um, if you want to be there, no one can tell you whether you belong or not. So it's through these experiences that we need to learn how to also manage our emotions when we're going through those things, because it is difficult. We're going through something new. But we also bring with us a great deal of experience and intangible value, and that a lot of civilians don't have. So we do have a leg up in what we bring to the workforce. I think it's very important that you connect with other people who have been there. When I transitioned from the military, that was a very difficult and lonely process, because I wasn't surrounded by people that knew what I was going through. I didn't even know what I was going through. So I was also a military spouse. And so women men might do this too, but women really do this. We hit pause on our own reflection and our own life, and we take care of other people. We're really good at that. But what we don't do is we don't look at what do I need? And so by doing that, to figure out what you need is to surround yourself with people that have been there and they can tell you, hey, I struggled with this. You might too. Um, that was something that I didn't do right away. And I think we need to get that message out there even more so that people understand, like, wow, this is really emotionally hard, but that's okay. That's normal. That means that you're alive and that you can go through this and that you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. Joe, go ahead. You want to chime in on this? I know you talk a lot about transition.
Oh, I was just I just like the idea about transitioning that you were saying earlier. I always kind of, well, I don't always, but I've kind of started to liken transition to chow, right? In the military, especially in combat, it's continuous. So you're continuously transitioning, continuously reevaluating your go bag. I think Kingston here, Kingsley usually has a go bag, talks about it, but I think that's just a thing that we do. We got to really kind of find that village. What I wanted to also comment on and hear a little bit more of your perspective was that idea that you mentioned earlier, right, where you got that command and it's preferential treatment. I've actually heard that more frequently about women in service, right? Like if they make a mistake, well, see, they weren't good enough to be here. And then if they excel, oh, well, she's getting special treatment. It's like a double-edged sword, and that's got to be so difficult. And then the other thing, recognizing that with that, especially as a commissioned officer, that has to be even more difficult because the nature of the military is to follow orders of your superior officers and those of the president, et cetera, and those kind of things. So how did you work through those issues in service, and then now in transition, hearing when you're sharing your story of transition, people still looking at that fact as being a woman? Like, how do you kind of overcome those barriers?
Wow. So, Joe, there's so much that came to mind when you were saying that I feel like is important to talk about because I was actually a single female officer for almost my entire career, which made it even more difficult because you're under a magnifying glass. And no matter who I talk to, there must be something else besides work going on. And the other hard part about it is usually people that are in command are married. And so you're expected to do this FRG and run this family program. And oh, by the way, well, she is not married and she has no children. So I really didn't fit in this box. And I got a lot of pushback from other spouses who assumed that I was there for other things besides my job. I think the things that really got me through it were my male battle buddies, my first sergeant, my NCOs, because they started to see the way I was being treated. I was in some very difficult situations as a young lieutenant, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if it was right or wrong. It's hard when you're in it. It's so much easier to have the answer when you're outside of it. But those NCOs really led me through some very difficult situations. And so I needed my counterparts. And that's how I got through those things. And, we can't do it alone. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it was extremely difficult. I'm actually proud of myself now because at times, I don't know how I got through those things. It was just, I knew I couldn't give up.
Ann, I want to say thank you for that, because I think there's a lot of veterans, male and female, as they go through their either service and then even in their transition at the end. A lot of them kind of use this idea that, oh, I got this and I did it and this and that. But I want to thank you for saying that you didn't do this alone, and the importance of actually finding what I always say, a village or a community, but finding those core people. Like what I like to say is that we all have a network, right? And it's important to build as big a network, share your message with as many people as possible. But then you're going to find that core group of individuals that regardless will kind of elevate you and keep pushing you forward, and those are the ones that we lean on. So I want to thank you for sharing that, the importance of that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Kingsley.
And I just want to say thank you for number one coming on the show and sharing your part, right? Because as a male and that was in the military, we see things differently. But then coming from your perspective, as being a officer, number one, a female officer in a male dominant industry, and then you have to do everything more stronger, fast. The strong way I could do it, but when you talk about, okay, so now I see that you're a clinical social worker. So what made you like, it's time for me to transition out of the military and go come in the corporate sector, but now your passion now is to, as you transition to a clinical social worker, like, okay, I'm going to use my knowledge that I gained from the service and the difficulties and the challenges, and now definitely to talk about, for the females, right, to give them some hope and aspiration, because I know that some females that are coming in now is, I'm sure they're going through the same battles, and if you're going through it as an officer, I can only imagine what the enlisted force, is going through, right? Because a lot of times when I first came in, came in from the ground up, and I seen a lieutenant. I was like, "Oh man, a lieutenant!" But when you get up there in rank, you're like, "Oh, that's just a LT, right?" But for you coming in through the officer route, you had to come in at that level already. It commands and demands respect, right? Just by having the rank on by itself. It's like having that rank on by itself. But then when you go sit in the room and you look around, there's other officers, but then um like they they'll ask you a second or third opinion, but actually when you're the smartest person in the room, they'll kind of look over you. So what made that transition, like, well, non-transition, now I'm going to come back and help the the females and the ladies and everybody that's in the military, like, hey, this is my issue, what I went through. Now I'm coming back with a different skill set so I can add on to show you how you could kind of build your resiliency to kind of make it through, right? Because of what you're doing now is phenomenal. So I just want to say thank you, one, for coming on and sharing your story, and as part of the veteran framework. So thank you.
Um, Kingsley. So what I started to learn, as I had all positions where I had some soldiers underneath me, whether it was a platoon leader, company executive officer, company commander, um, I loved those jobs. And what I loved about those jobs was taking care of the people. And what I started to realize, I grew up a very sheltered life. And I write about this, and that I guess I was okay. I grew up in an okay childhood, and people joined the military to get out of that. And those things were very eye opening to me. And it was taking care of them and making sure they had money, not me not giving it to them, but them understanding, like, money to buy food. And these are our service members, and they can't have their basic needs met. I was actually, like, being a social worker as these leadership positions, taking care of people. And then some hard times when I actually served as a two-star general's aide. And I went to funerals with him and had to read awards of people that had passed and be there for the family members. And that was another aspect of taking care of people that have served in another way. And so it was always just this aspect of, oh, it's taking care of the person, not really the mission. You need to take care of the person so they can do the mission. And that led me to social work. And I just felt like that was a calling for me. And so everything I've gone through has been really a blessing in disguise, because it brought me to something where I can still give back to people, and just in a new way.
I appreciate Shannon, because I listened to this podcast, and this individual saying, you know, the new day starts at midnight, and midnight is at dark, right? So it's like coming out of the dark and into the light. What you're doing now is it's shedding light on how your journey was and it's a part of the dark phase, right? But all of that built up to where you're at now, to where now you're in the light phase, is coming to light. So hey, I'm gonna share, when my day started at midnight in the dark, like there's a lot of things that went through, but now I'm able to shed light on it and be the light for others to say, hey, if I made it through, I'm going to show you, I'm going to, share in the book, I'm going to show you how I came through it. And maybe you could pull some nuggets from it and use it as well. Because it's like when people come in, you don't know what you don't know. Right. But once you experience it, you understand what I'm saying? Once you experience it, people like, okay, well, now I could go see Annie because she's experienced that. So I'm going to ask her advice. I'm going to get advice. I'm going to write some stuff down instead of something like, well, I read somewhere in the book that this, but did you experience it? Because it's a different, you get a different result from when you sit though and you experience something than you actually read it. So I just want to say thank you and keep pushing forward, because this is only the beginning.
I love that, Kingsley. That was a great analogy.
Yeah, and he also has his own show on Fridays. You guys need to check out Concrete and Code. Here's Kingsley. Thank you. So, and one of the things I think also that I've realized, especially, is we're very altruistic as veterans. When we get out, we immediately want to help other veterans. We really want to help them transition. And when I got into the civilian world and the business world, the first thing that they told me was be selfish. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to help my brothers and sisters. I'm going to go and figure out a way to give them open doors for them. I've seen it many times that the challenges with veterans here is they are rock stars. They got the soft skills. They got capabilities beyond, just as great as their civilian counterparts, but they're not getting spotlighted. They're not getting visibility here. Have you encountered something similar to that in your perspective, especially in this transitions phase?
Yeah. So Jeffrey, what I had shared a little bit in the beginning of like being an outsider, because of the moving around and trying to become a social worker, starting a new career, and moving around and applying to new jobs, I've always been an outlier. I didn't always, I wasn't perceived well or accepted well. I've even had people who had interviewed me told me, well, you're not from here. That's why you're not getting this management position. So those things are very difficult, but I would say is like, don't let them stop you. That's really their personal problems that are getting in the way, and it's unfortunate. But there is something out there for everybody if you just keep pushing to find it.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is where, and I love what you talk about as far as keep pushing, because there's, even though if there's doors that are going to close, that's okay. I look at those as blessings here. I think as a veteran, if you have that mindset shift, because you need a mindset shift, right? You need to understand that you served your country honorably, you have those capabilities, and you need to find your tribe. I think you hit on it earlier, right? Finding your tribe, whether it's military spouses, whether it's Veterans Club here, which we want all you guys here as part of the Veterans Club, because we're an amazing group and we're a very motley crew, as someone has kind of called us here. But I think finding that tribe is really important here. So I really appreciate you sharing that here for that. Dee?
Yeah, and I do want to go over some of the challenges, like personal and even among those around you, on your transition as a military spouse, transitioning as a mother, right? What challenges, like what were the conflicts internally that you were dealing with?
So this is also difficult because it's like a juggling act. We as women are trying to fit into this societal expectations of constantly being the mother and being there for the children. And I've been fortunate that, my husband took a career that where my career can be put in the forefront. And so it's been a challenge for me to let go of that. Um, and step into this unknown of what does that mean where I don't have to hit pause. That can be scary, but also exciting. And we as women need to not stop ourselves. Don't let the fear and the self-doubt get in the way, because we need to lean on those supports. Like Jeff had mentioned, that we need to lean on our tribe and just like guide ourselves to the next path, anything that's possible, and just let it happen.
What are some of the tools that either you've helped form or you've developed, right, or that you have used to help you along this process?
So for one, I am a clinical social worker and have been to many, many, many therapy trainings. I've been to therapy myself. Um, that's what's gotten me to the point where I have self-awareness. But that emotional piece that I talk about is that gap that no one really talks about. I went to ACAP with the Army. We didn't talk about emotions. We talked about how to have a resume and how to get dressed. And when you're a spouse, they don't talk to you about how emotionally that hard that is to go into a new culture where there's new languages, new customs. We don't talk about those things. And so I ended up trying to fill a gap with the book that I wrote, that talks about these emotional challenges that we don't talk about publicly, but I want that there so that some other woman out there, and it could be helpful for men too, but some other woman out there can at least know they're not alone and that they don't have to go through this alone. And hopefully that will help them carry them through that difficult time that they could also be experiencing.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, right? And like you mentioned, if for other women to see and read about, right, that somebody else has experienced this, that this is, you're not the only one. And as social workers, this is something we hear about a lot, right? Trust me, you're not the first one. You're not the only person that is going through this or has experienced this, right? But at the same time, I feel important that men also take a look at those resources and hear and read about the challenges, and how women feel in these areas, because just like your first sergeant, right, who played a big role in guiding you and showing you and empowering you from his position, right, as a male, as a first sergeant, on, hey, this is like, I'm empowering her, yes, she's a woman, but she's your commander, right? Men, by reading and hearing about these challenges, can be influenced and can support those women in those roles and those transitions. It's all about realizing the influence that you have and what your role is in whatever position you're in, right? Your influence as a man is there automatic, or just as the influence that we have as women, right, as veterans, as mothers, as, just another fellow soul in the room. Your influence and your role really, it's important to know what role is that you're playing. Lakeisha, I really want to get your perspective on this, and just really share with us a little bit on your story.
Yes, absolutely. My story was totally different. Mind you, I had to go through 2 services. I went from the Army, which I truly appreciated and loved, but because of the transitions with the Army, leaving the base that I was at, I had to groom to understand how to operate my field in the Air Force, which is honorable as well too. But that's anxiety on so many different levels. But at the same time, I had to suit it up and continue on and do what I need to do because I'm a service member. It was a lot to do that, and actually able to bridge my family through it as well too, because I wasn't by myself. I had young children and I was married. It was a lot to deal with. So I had so many different roles. So when you're going through that and that process, I had to take it one day at a time. I had to go to therapy. I had to begin to get somebody else, your strong friends, and actually it would help me with that transition as well, because I knew I couldn't do it by myself. So mind you, it took one day at a time and I got through it. And I began to soar, with this new role, being in the Air Force. And I was able to think on it differently, with a different perspective, actually as a blessing, and actually it was something for me to soar and bring others with me, my young comrades as well too. And also my comrades that was in the leadership roles that I was at. So my question to you, Ruth, how were you able to do that too? You may not have had to change branches, but, being the role that you were at as a leader, as an officer, how were you able to change when it became different and big, because now that you're married, things are changed. How were you able to groom yourself and cope?
So what I want to say is give a plug to my spouse, my husband. who has recognized the sacrifices that women make in the military and as military spouses. He said, you know, the military tends to glamorize that the things that we get, we travel, we go to nice places, but we don't recognize the sacrifices. And so I want to put a plug in that. And I constantly started to realize that these challenges I was facing were the same across every place I went to. I had this this facade of an idea that I'm going to the Northeast where I'm from, things will be different. They weren't. And I realized that, you know what, this is a constant thing that we have to continue to fight for and stand up for and not allow the societal piece of it to overcome us.
Yeah, I think we have. I've heard of this saying of like the grass is not greener on the other side, right? In with transition, with change of careers, change of locations, we think that it'll be better, right? They're my people. That's where I grew up. That's where I'm from, and it'll be better. And then we realize that no, it's not different, right? And in a way, it's almost like we are different. We have a
Yes.
like we have a new normal, right? We have our eyes and our area that we see now, and the things that we notice around us have changed. So we did go back to that same place that we knew back then, that made us feel comfortable, that made us feel that we fit in at that time. But now we have changed. We have different perspectives. We value different things that we at that time we didn't know or we had not experienced. And it's so important, right, to continue to recognize the importance and the role that men in our lives play, whether it's our husbands, our fathers, our brothers, our fellow brothers in arms, right, in leadership, because they do have a huge impact, and it could either be a positive impact or it could either be a negative impact. And as women now, like I in this advocacy area, right, I've begun to see a lot of groups of women, like, you know, empowering women and all of these things. And I have noticed in some of those groups, it's almost like we are putting down the role of the man, right? As like, so by doing that, we're doing the exact same thing that was being done back in the day where men would
Mhm.
put a woman down, right? So instead of bringing each other up together and recognizing the value of like some of the roles that this men played in our lives, like we are coming up together. So we don't need to do this and put men down, right? Because of what they did. Is like, no, let's bring them up, highlight the good and some of the things that maybe they could have done different or how it made us feel. I think that's we kind of we will help each other out. And now you can't take someone down, like you cannot climb on top of each other to get up to the top, right? So it's really important. I really commend you on that. Transitioning myself as from a service member to a military spouse with someone who was a first sergeant, a sergeant major for companies who were deployed to the same places that I had been, right? Doing those roles like the FRG leader, the senior spouse leader, right? I was like, but I didn't. So I was conflicted on. I was a veteran. I'm a soldier too. I know where your husbands are at right now, right? And it was expected of me to understand them, and it was just a conflict, internal conflict on. But I learned from those spouses. I learned from those women what concerns they had. That then it helped me communicate those to my husband. Hey, the home the home front is not doing great, right? And if they're not doing great, your soldiers are not going to perform great. So just building that bridge and communication really help the leaders up front understand what was going on with their soldiers, and just really foster that. That I do want to ask, um, what I will say female veterans programs have you seen implemented, whether it's through the VA or community, that have really made it outside of the book, like brought that concept, right, of like, look, we know what you're going through. As social workers, right, you can connect on that level, but then empowering them. What are some of the resources that you have experienced yourself that are really putting that message out of you're not alone on this and we will make this together?
You know, Dee, I feel like I don't have the answer for this because I hadn't really taken my veteran status, the importance of that. I put others above me. Um, and it's also difficult because I work with veterans, so it's like this fine line of finding places where I can go where I'm not also servicing those people with with therapy. But now I do realize the importance of those locations and those platforms for female veterans. I know there's the Red, White, and Blue program. And I've connected with other women groups in the community, but they're not specifically veteran groups. But I'm definitely interested in hearing more about them because I think they are very important for the female veterans to have a place to go to.
Hey, Lakeisha, do you have anything else, any other questions? Do you want to add on?
Yes, I did. I wanted to, pretty much just what we were talking about as far as the coping, just our mindset and mental health is so important for us to make sure we keep in our forefront when we're moving forward, even when we're transitioning state to state, coast to coast. How are you grouping, those programs and opportunities for us to begin to understand our mental health if it's declining in a place that we don't want it to be in, and for us to be able to get the signs where we need more support and more help?
So I'm a big advocate of self-care. The military has a different mindset of that your worth is tied to your production. And I think that's very dangerous because when military members transition and they're doing nothing, they they equate their value to that. They think, well, I'm not doing anything, I'm worthless. Well, that's not true. Because we need that time to reflect on what did I just go through? The military does not talk about emotions. That's another part of it is that, and being a trauma therapist, I know that when we stop, when we slow down, which is usually when we're doing nothing, when we're going to sleep, those memories come back. And so that time when you separate, that time is so important for you to consider. Even if you've never thought, I don't need therapy, therapy's for everybody. It's not something that you need. Everybody has a brain, and we need to reset and process the things that we've been through so that you can be prepared for what's next. Because if you don't, then that's going to continue to have negative effects on yourself and your family. So it's very important to plan the rest when you retire before you go into the career. Spend the time with your family and also take time to take care of yourself too.
Thank you for this. Thank you for answering that, because, PTSD is real. A lot of people don't understand that, we go through that, even after we sign out of the military, and just to address that and just to understand how to cope without to heal day to day from that is so important for us. So thank you so much for answering that.
Great question, Lakeisha, and I really want to just touch on that a little more, and because a lot of times I've been talking about lately is this invisible enemy that we have here. Because a lot of times when people think of veterans and they get care, they all they look at is, well, what's on your body? Are you missing a limb? Are you missing anything? But what they don't understand is there's this mental health aspect here. A lot of times, what really just pisses me off is veterans that don't have that are not reaching out for help until it's too late, right? They end up taking their lives. And especially what comes to mind when I was doing research for this show is she was a staff sergeant. I think her name was Michelle Young, if I'm not mistaken, and she had taken her life. She was a popular influencer on social media platforms. She looked like she had her whole life ahead of her. Like everything was glamorous and it was well, and she also gave back a lot. And I don't know if it was unexpected or not, but she ended up taking her life like a couple of days after her daughter's birthday. You know, and I know that last year or a couple of years ago, she talked about that she had lost her brother when she was 14 to suicide, right? And so, what would you say from a social worker perspective that those veterans here are on the fence, that they think that they don't have any support? Like, what would you say to them? And maybe our women veterans as well, right? Because I don't know what the stats are on between them and males as far as taking their lives, but bottom line is none of them should be taking their lives. Like, we should find a way to give them a community, give them a tribe.
Yeah, Jeff, I share those same worries about who are the people where are those veterans that aren't asking for help? Because the ones that I meet with are the ones that said, I need help. They're the ones that requested it. How do we access those people that don't even consider it? So what I would say is that you get a full health checkup that includes your body and your mind, because we're so quick to sign up for our annual checkup, but we don't consider the brain. And that should be part of it. Is you need a whole health checkup. And it can be hard to go to access services with the VA because we had this mentality in the military, except at least for me, that don't show that there's anything wrong because it's going to lead to something negative. And so that is a mentality that many veterans hold on to going into the VA. There's nothing negative that comes from you saying, I need help. If anything, it's something positive. And so flipping the script of negative comes from asking for help. It's very easy for me to say that, but you don't know unless you try. And so the biggest things I always tell myself is, and the veterans that I work with, there is no change with no change. And so we have to do something different and consider something different because it might be helpful.
Yeah, and I think that is that's very key here. I mean, I will self-report. I have still not gotten to the VA. I have still not gotten my disability, and D and the whole team here tells me every single day. I've had veterans give me an entire novel of like how to do it, and I've they said this year, Jeff, you're going to make it a goal. I don't care. I'm gonna report you if I have to the VA. So I get it. The Marine in me. I'm not afraid to ask for help. I just have not done it, and I know that is something that it's important to do. So I do agree with that point. And I know someone who talks about, especially when it comes to the mental health side, is Kingsley here. And so I want to get Kingsley's thoughts on this current topic that we're at.
Yeah, so this is one of the platforms where when somebody's looking for help, they'll come. Somebody, I guarantee you, either somebody that's listening now or somebody that's gonna be listening in needs to hear this. Because I was one of those individuals, right? I didn't, just like you said, like I had to keep my mouth shut because when I was a defender, right? So it's like I need to stay ready. But every time I went in for my checkup, straight down the line, I'm good to go. When I wasn't, right? And that built up over time until I started to find myself into circles to where they started to talk about it. I never used to say anything, but I used to just listen. And this can be somebody's just listen moment. They might end up say, you know what? On Tuesday, I'm going to go to the VA, or on Tuesday, I'm going to seek help, or on Tuesday, I'm going to reach out to Annie. Like, I need some time to process this, right? Because I guarantee you, somebody in this that's looking in or that's listening in right now, or that's going to be listening later, needs this right here. Because it's a war. It's a dogfight every day on the inside. It's a dogfight. I could just imagine your dogfight when you was in service, and then transition over. Now you helping other people through their dogfight when you're still doing your dogfight, right? So it's like that balance, that give and take. So I'm sure when you're talking to people and getting them through, it's helping you getting through yours as well, right? Because just as you said, like I'm helping people, so I can't go and help myself. As somebody, man, a wise person told me, like, in order for you to help others, you got to help yourself first. And
Mm-hmm.
was always told, this is from one of my good friends, He's like, you ever notice like when you go on a plane, when that if forever that thing drops from the top, it says put on your mask. They tell you what to put on your mask first. And that's what I had to learn. So I had to put my mask on first, and that's what got me the help I needed to where now I'm comfortable in sharing my resilience journey, right? Because what people see on the outside is not going on the inside, but I have to keep that separation until I'm ready. And that's what the key is, like when you're ready. But individuals like you share doing the social, like that's hard. Like imagine just pulling in that or pulling out that information from others and just letting them to feel unguarded. You know, like you have somebody that come in, you conversate with them, they hands are up, they always ready to fight. And I'm sure when they talk to you, the arms get relaxed, you know, the shoulders drop, and then you finally get to the root cause instead of just looking at the symptoms, because it's the root cause that's going to address things. So once again, this is definitely powerful for the female veterans out there, for the female women that are out still in service. Like I'm not a one, but I understand. I understand because I have sisters, I have a mother, I have an aunt, I have friends, you know, that shares, but they'll share when they're ready. So I just want to say thank you for bringing it out, because right now this is helping me. Because sometimes they say sometimes you got to remove yourself from yourself to understand yourself. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess if you were thinking of it in that aspect, if there's someone out there thinking about asking for help, but it's hard, um, is that think about all the people that your decision will impact. You know, you have children in your life, you have your spouse in your life. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of them. And this is for both, you know, speaking to men and women. And if it makes it even easier and you're in the Hampton Roads area, please just call and ask to be connected to me. I can at least do an initial appointment with you and deal with the backlash of scheduling later. But, you know, I'm willing to put myself out there if I can make that first step a little bit easier for you, so that we can connect you to the right place. And I can help you do that, hold your hand virtually in a sense to help you get what it is that you need.
Powerful, powerful. Joe, Joe, I know you talk a lot about self advocacy, man, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is
I mean, I think, and as an officer, you probably recognize this too. Like, I think when we're in, we seem to become indoctrinated in the fact to not self advocate. And the way we do that is because they generate hit lists, right? So you don't send yourself to dental, you get put on a list and they come out and say, hey, you got to go to dental. Hey, you got to go get vaccines. Hey, you got to go do this. And we get in that habit of not self-advocating. And then even on top of that, when you do have like a legitimate concern, if you don't feel just right, you never want to go to medical, because everybody around you is going to be like, it's malingering. Oh, suck it up. And it just gets that whole thing. And I don't think it's like a malice thing towards it. It's just the nature of the beast. It's the culture that we're in. And the reason I say that is because there's actually a veteran that I connected with, and I can't remember his name. Hopefully, if he sees this, he'll mention it. He actually just finished his doctorate, and they're actually doing research to prove that military service meets all the qualifications of a primary culture. So I think there's another reason why we have such a hard transition, is that we really become indoctrinated in a completely new primary culture. And we are no longer just Americans. We are veteran Americans. I don't know. That's my new term I'm trying to coin, right? And the idea with that is you don't change your primary culture when you move to a different country. You adapt and you fit your culture into that. And one of the cultural things of being in the service is lack of self-advocacy, is the, oh, just suck it up. And I know we always, again, I wanted to share this with you, and I want to hear your perspective. I think that it's great for us to petition the military to change. And it's great for us to work toward the DOD to come up with new initiatives. But really, I think that's what we're for. We've already transitioned. We're out in the world. we're still like, for me, I feel like Jeff, right? Like my transition is still continuous, and just like the rest of us. But as we're out, uh, it behooves us to have people like you, Ann, doing things that you're doing, helping advocate for this for each other. I don't know. What are your thoughts on maybe we put together hit lists for veterans? Like we all reach out and we say, hey, you're due for. Do you know what I mean? Like there's got to be something like that. Have you ever considered something like that? Like how do you reach out to your former soldiers to check on and still kind of do that? And when you do, are they very receptive of that?
Joe, I think this is such an important topic that you're talking about. And actually, I'm honored. A lot of my soldiers have sent me friend requests because we couldn't connect on that level before. So I have a lot of them on my Facebook now. But I think what we would be good for the VA to adopt, which I've thought about, is having a sponsorship program, because the AA community, they do really well in having sponsors, and AA also does really well because everyone that's a part of that group, because I'm a former addiction therapist as well, is that they make meaning of what they've been through. And we should really learn from that aspect and have a sponsorship program for all veterans. Like, hey, you just got out, you're getting paired with this 10-year veteran or this 5-year veteran. And there's nothing. It's just like a once a month check-in, and then more if you want it. But that's something that we don't have, that we could totally benefit from, of just, yeah, that's my veteran sponsor. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's really just creating a space where we can share a vulnerability that we have that we're not ready to share with our spouse, so that we can practice that and feel comfortable sharing that with someone else.
And I will say, Anne, like that is a win-win situation, because we continue to heal by helping others heal. I know in our social work, role, and even as advocates, right? We're not even realizing, but as we're advocating for a topic, we are healing ourselves. Like I worked for a nonprofit organization that helped wounded veterans, right? Deal with PTSD and stuff at the time where I had not even addressed my own PTSD, right? And that led me into even applying for my VA claim 10 years after I had left the military. Then I transitioned to help families and veterans of those who had lost a loved one, right? Which address grief, which led me to really recognize that some of the things that I thought were PTSD was really grief that I had not addressed. So then I was healing and healing again, right? In my current role, advocating for veterans, right, who have issues with immigration or are deported, is helping me revisit the roots of where I came from, a family from immigrants, right? That I had not really learned to value the sacrifices my parents made when they were working in the fields in Arizona, sacrifices so that I could have a green card, right? So as we heal and advocate in these spaces, we ourselves are healing. And if the VA was to do that sponsorship program, it would do a double win. That's the double whammy, right? You continue to help those veterans who are continuing to transition, yet helping those who are just starting. So I'm gonna write myself a note, and I'm gonna sprinkle the fairy dust and the groups and conversations that I'm in. Hey, have you thought about this? Because we need to be those who bring up others' ideas and others' names and others' organizations in the spaces where they're not in. Right? Because we got a seed. So we need to make like shimmy over and make room for someone else.
Wow, D, I love it, man. Kingsley, you got something?
Oh, nah, man, I'm just soaking it all in. I'm just,
Yeah, I'm feeling D, man. I'm feeling her vibe right here, man. She's on fire today, so I'm not gonna stop that fire. I mean, it's on here, man. So I think one of the things too, I mean, D, what you're talking about is the battle buddy program. When we join the service, we get a battle buddy. They go everywhere you go. And sometimes, you know, they're right next to you at the head. And you're like, all right, man, as long as you're in that head and I'm in that head, we're good to go, bro. We're not going to fight today. You know, we're good. But we don't have that battle buddy when we're out. And I think that what everyone's talking about here is we need that type of battle buddy, right? We're quick to transition and put people through a fire hose. But you got to understand, like, we're taking our identity to something bigger that we have. And now we got to go and find another type of purpose. Because a lot of times veterans, why they take their lives, because they're lacking purpose. Sebastian Younger talks about this all the time, right? The Book of Tribes, finding your tribe. Why do veterans? It's a great book, and I think all veterans should grab that book, right? And hopefully, and I'm going to manifest having him on the Veterans Club sometime this year here. So hopefully we can make that happen. But as we wrap up here, I do want to kind of give you the spotlight and final words on your book, and I think it's very powerful based upon what I've heard, and for the audience here and the listeners here, if you want to talk more about it.
Yeah, so the book I wrote is, like I said, filling in this gap of the intangible aspects of transitioning and of being a woman in the military, outside of the military, and in the career fields, professionally. It can be beneficial for men and women because we need to continue to support each other. And I'm hoping, like I said, that this is a tool that someone can pick up and use to get through those uncomfortable times. And the book is called You Belong, a guidebook for the career-minded woman on the move. And I just hope that it's helpful for other people that are experiencing these challenges.
Okay, and when is it coming out?
It's coming out at the end of March. I wish I could give you an exact date. I'm publishing with Tactical 16.
Okay.
So if there are veterans out there that you feel like you want to tell your story, that is an excellent organization to reach out to consider publishing yourself. And I'll definitely share that information with you guys. Once they give me the exact release date, I can share that with you so that we can share it with the listeners of today.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I want to have you back on here, and I want to thank you so much for joining us here in the Veterans Club. You could have been anywhere else, but you're here with us today. I think today was a very powerful conversation here. We do have an after show where this is exclusively on LinkedIn audio. This is where folks from all the LinkedIn community can come in and talk to you. We network, we continue the conversation, especially on today's topic, which is about our women warriors. So that invitation is out to you. If you have time, and any final words. And
no, thank you for what you guys are doing. It is extremely valuable.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much again for joining us here on the Veterans Club. If you want to be a guest, if you want to support us, please feel free to scan the QR code there. You can book a conversation with myself, and then we can get you on the next show. So thank you, everybody. God bless you, and we look forward to talking to some of you guys here at the after show. The Veterans Club signing out.
Peace out, everyone.
Peace.